fact, the judge and attorneys in the Ohio Family Massacre trial are meeting today to go over jury instructions, but just moments ago, Judge Deering dismissed the death specifications for George Wagner on counts 1 through 8 at the state's request. This basically means that George Wagner no longer faces the possibility of a death sentence if he were to have been found guilty on those first 8. It might have made him eligible for the death penalty. This is the second day that they're meeting without the jury present. Wagner faces 8 counts of aggravated murder, those first 8, and for the shooting deaths of the Rhoden family members back in 2016. It's a case we've been watching over the past few months because it's taken months to prosecute. Let's bring back our guest, former prosecutor Chris Ann Hall in Tampa, Florida, and trial attorney Cannon Kearney in New York. And Chris Ann, the odds of them ever getting a death conviction on George Wagner were about 0, given the way this trial has gone. I don't know of any jury in this country that would recommend death. Bottom line, though, what does this say for the fact that the prosecution today is asking, all right, telling the judge, all right, let's get rid of the death specifications on the first 8?
I think it says exactly what you say. They see the writing on the wall. They're not going to be successful with that. And as a prosecutor, man, I'll tell you what, removing the possibility of death penalty lifts a really large burden at trial. And so you don't have to worry about making that argument. And especially if you don't believe you're going to get it, you don't want to burden the jury with that idea. And I believe that the burden of the idea, I'm going to be sitting in judgment, I'm going to be being involved with actually coming to the conclusion of whether a man lives or dies, is a really big problem. And it can cloud the jury's decision making. And again, it just makes things way too complicated. As a prosecutor, I would never ask for the death penalty unless I was absolutely 100% certain.
Jake Wagner testified for the state, and part of the deal that he made was that if his testimony went as expected, that the death penalty would be removed for all of his family members, specifically his father and of course, brother George. So this obviously is part of the equation, Cannon, and can give prosecutors the option of saying, the only reason we're taking that off the table is because Jake fulfilled his obligations. Let's talk generically, or let's talk just about this trial. He took the stand for an extended period of time. Does he have a shot here? George Wagner, do you think that he was able to convince the jury that he's not one of those Wagners, he's George and he's different?
Ted, this one is going to come down to the wire. I believe that basically the prosecution is trying to show that due to his association to his family members, due to his family members who actually did say that they committed the crimes, testifying that he was involved, that's their story to the jury. Does that play out for the jury when George says, I don't have a motive, this was his child, this was his reasoning, his issue, this was my mom's issue? I don't know. It's going to come down to, was his story really articulated in the way in which it was persuasive to the jury? So, as you know, I'm usually one that will quickly shout out what I believe the verdict will be. I truthfully don't have a forecast on this one, except to say that it's coming down to the very last end.
We are expecting those closing arguments on Monday after the holiday. The jury has been excused for the week, and they've been through a lot. They have been listening intently in this case for months. This was a very deliberate prosecution, Chris Ann. The bottom line is the prosecution's evidence that George was there is all about Jake. He's the only person to put George there. He came in and he testified and he says, yeah, George was there. He wouldn't kill anybody. He was a wimp, Wagner, but he was there. Is this a case, though, after all of this and George being on the stand for an extended period of time, that jury nullification might come in, even if a juror thinks that I kind of believe, Jake, that George was there, but I'm not pulling the trigger on this because I don't think he wanted to be there. Even though George lied on the stand, possibly a juror might think that. There's so much going on here, the complexity of it, and let's face it, people might feel sorry for this dude after listening to him for multiple days on the stand.
Well, the prosecution can, point their fingers at Jake and why they're removing the death penalty, but the real reason, I believe, is because of jury nullification. If they tried to argue in closing that George deserves the death penalty, you would certainly inspire even greater sympathy from the jury. And the jury would be like, wait, what a minute. What is the prosecution doing? Why are they going after this guy? And there would be a greater sympathy for George in that, and they might lose everything. So from a prosecutorial perspective, the dropping of the death penalty gives them the opportunity to argue, hey, you might have sympathy for George, but he was there. He could have said something. He had a responsibility, and there are lesser charges that he is guilty of.
Good point. Our Court TV producer, Emanuela Grinberg, was in the courtroom this morning when all this transpired and joins us by phone. Emanuela, basically, what happened here? Was it just because Jake fulfilled his obligations, or something else why the state said no death penalty for George?
Hey, Ted. No, this was, yes, very much connected to Jake's testimony. The state moved to dismiss these death specifications at the request of the defense. The defense made that request over 2 weeks ago after Jake finished testifying. And at that point, the state said, we're not ready to do that yet. We'll come back. So here we are now. We're discussing jury instructions, including that verdict form, which we know would have those death specifications. So again, the defense brought it up that we would like to, we renew our request to dismiss the death specifications. The state said, well, yes, right now this is a procedural matter that we're doing this, not necessarily based on the merits, but we are doing this now pursuant to our agreement with Jake that he appear to testify truthfully. And so at that point, the judge dismissed the charges, the specifications.
All right, you've been in this courtroom. We've been watching it from afar. We watched George on the stand, and some people, me included a little bit, feel sorry for the guy. And did he connect with this jury, do you believe, Emanuela?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, to the extent that they were definitely surprised when he showed up. I don't think we never know for sure, except unless we know for sure that a defendant is going to testify. They were leaning on the edge of their seats, taking notes throughout, even as it extended into the second day of his testimony with cross-examination. But there were moments where the prosecutor did poke holes in his stories that it seemed like sort of he had conflicting accounts that he gave to law enforcement versus what he said on the stand about where he was the night of the murders, his alibi. So it really does come down to who do they believe, Jake or George?
Yeah, it's fascinating the way it'll come down. And for the record, I believe Jake, but I feel sorry for George. Emanuela Grinberg, thank you. We are, again, expecting closings in this case that we've been following for months to take place next week. We'll have them for you. Emanuela and team will be there.